Let's take a listen to what the Russian president had to say earlier.
The elite in the West, they keep talking of their exceptionalism. They are forcing their will on other nations, forcing their rules on others. But it would appear that they have forgotten what Nazism was all about.
Here in Paris, the French Parliament will vote later today on a text asking the European Union to add the Wagner Group to its list of terrorist organisations. The Russian mercenary group, headed by Yevgeny Prigozhin, has played a conspicuous role in Ukraine. It's also been accused of conducting human rights abuses on the African continent, the EU having already added Wagner to its list of sanctioned individuals and entities earlier in the year. Joining me now is, from our International Affairs desk is Oliver Farry. Oliver, let's go back to this speech by Vladimir Putin. It all had a very familiar air about it, didn't it?
Yeah, there certainly was. The Russian president was banging more or less the same drum as he has been for the past 15 months, casting Russia as being locked in a civilizational struggle with the West and also victim of a war declared on it. Now, this is, of course, very different from how most people in Europe and certainly Ukraine would see it. Given that Moscow actually did the invading of Ukraine in February 2022. But Putin has his own particular logic. Russia's presence in Ukraine is still part of a special military operation, as Russia continues to call it, while the response on the part of Ukraine and its Western backers is war. Now, Victory Day is, of course, a celebration of Allied victory in the Second World War, a war that has a special resonance in Russia and indeed other former Soviet countries. Russia refers to it as the Great Patriotic War, which was fought by the Soviet Union as an existential struggle. And there is a certain truth in that. The USSR did suffer the greatest number of deaths by far in the conflict among any other countries, and it was also key to the Allied victory. But the war has also become a touchstone for Putin, no doubt because of its utility in harking back to a glorious past. The Second World War was not the last Russian military victory, but few since then have been quite as glorious. And the constant Kremlin talking points of branding Ukraine as a country of Nazis, despite it having a president of Jewish heritage, is very much in line with this. He constantly refers to people like Stepan Bandera, who were collaborationists with the Nazis in Ukraine during that war. Putin says that the world is once again at a civilizational turning point, pitting Russia against a West that has destroyed traditional values. This has already been said by him previously, such as last September, as a speech he gave to mark the annexation of Ukrainian regions, and also at his State of the Nation address in February. But Putin, of course, is also hampered by the war. As you said, there was no flyover at the commemoration this year, and it was otherwise scaled down. Particularly, there was no carrying of portraits of the war dead, possibly because this could have proven embarrassing for the Kremlin. You don't really want to highlight the war dead in a current war. The anger of mothers of the dead was fairly instrumental in causing the Russians to scale back the Afghanistan war in the 1980s. And already, according to the United States Department of Defense, 20,000 Russians have died in Ukraine. That's well in excess of the 14,500 that died in the 10-year war in Afghanistan in the 1980s.
We were just talking there, Oliver, about the Wagner Group and how the French Parliament is set to vote on a text asking the EU to list it as a terrorist organisation. And of course, one prominent figure during this war has been its founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who previously went back on his threat to pull his group out of Bakhmut if it didn't get more ammunition. But today he uploaded another video basically explaining how disgruntled he is with Moscow. What did he have to say?
Well, Yevgeny Prigozhin is flip-flopping here once again. He's, of course, as well as being the founder of Wagner, he's a long-time confidant of Vladimir Putin, going back to the early 1990s. He's been scathing in his criticism of the Russian military command for a long time, and the new video is no different. He was once again angry at the lack of ammunition getting to Wagner in the battle for Bakhmut, which is this eastern Ukrainian city that Russia has been devoting enormous resources to trying to capture. Now, today's video was that ultimatum repeated. He said that he wouldn't spoil the Victory Day commemorations and would wait till after the parade to post another video demonstrating how dire the situation was. That actually was not forthcoming, but there was strong criticism of the Russian command. This is something that Prigozhin has done for a long time. There's no love lost between him and the top brass of the military. He obviously feels that his closeness to Vladimir Putin gives him the liberty to do this. But this time it was a little bit cryptic and a little bit mysterious. He referred to a figure he called the happy grandfather, who thought that all was going well in the military campaign. But he asked, how can we win this war if by chance, and I'm just speculating here, it turns out that this grandfather is a complete idiot. He actually used a much stronger word than idiot there as well. It's not clear who he might mean by this. He might be talking about the generic Russian traditional voter who pretty much is the bedrock of Putin's support, or it could be the military command, his regular target, or it could perhaps be the man at the very top of the Russian state, Vladimir Putin himself. Prigozhin did not name anyone, but the timing is notable, especially as he appeared to have tempered his previous criticism 2 days ago. Yevgeny Prigozhin is still, it seems, on the Russian president's good side, and he may feel that he's licensed by Putin indeed to make these comments, but will this always be the case? We don't even know if the military will accede to Prigozhin's demands for greater resources to be allocated to Wagner, which has threatened to withdraw from Bakhmut in the past few days.
Thank you very much for that analysis, Oliver Farry.